Hello my dear students, welcome to our today's class. Do you remember what we have discussed in our last class? In our last class, we have studied about flowers and different parts of a flower, isn't it? So all of you say, which are the important parts of a flower? Let's say it together. The different parts of a flower are androecium, corolla, gynoecium, calyx, thalamus and pedicel. Today we want to study about the function of a flower in a plant. For what purpose a flower is having this much parts? We have already studied about the functions of different parts of a flower, isn't it? That we have already discussed in our last class. Today we have to study about the function of a flower in a plant. Are you ready for that? Then let's start. In a plant, where we can see the seeds of a plant in flowers or fruits, isn't it? Then these seeds are help for the reproduction. They are helping for the production of young ones in a plant. So we can say that flowers helps the plant for the reproduction. Reproduction is a process by which organisms produces their young ones for retaining their ancestry. Reproduction is a process by which organisms produces their young ones for retaining their ancestry. So in a plant, flowers are the reproductive organs. This is the main function of a flower. In a plant, flowers do the function of reproduction. They are the reproductive organ in a plant. Now we have to study about how the process of reproduction occurs in a plant, in a flower. How does the process of reproduction occurs in a flower? The different parts of a flower and its functions we have already discussed. And we studied about the male reproductive organ and the female reproductive organ in a flower, isn't it? Which was the male reproductive organ in a flower? The male reproductive organ is androecium and the female reproductive organ is gynoecium. Then here we have to study about how the process of reproduction occurs in a flower. It is by the help of the androecium and gynoecium. Then here, when we studied about the different parts in a flower, we observe the hibiscus flower, isn't it? Then we observe both the androecium and gynoecium in the same hibiscus flower, isn't it? So all of you look at this hibiscus flower. This we have already studied. Again, we are discussing about the androecium and gynoecium in this flower. Here, this is the androecium in this hibiscus flower. This portion is the gynoecium of this hibiscus flower. So in this particular flower, we can see both the androecium and gynoecium in the same flower. Let me show another flower before you. Here in this flower, we can observe the androecium here, but it is not having gynoecium here. So in this particular flower, it contains only androecium. So there are different types of flowers. In some flowers, they are containing both androecium and gynoecium in the same flower. But some other flowers are there, such as this pumpkin flower. Here, they are containing androecium and gynoecium in separate flowers. So the flowers which contains both androecium and gynoecium in the same flower are called as bisexual flowers. The examples for the bisexual flower, first one is hibiscus, that we have already studied, isn't it? Can you give some other examples for bisexual flowers? Yes, sunflower, rose, etc. So the speciality of bisexual flowers is they having both androecium and gynoecium in the same flower. But some other types of flowers are there. They having androecium and gynoecium in separate flowers. That type of flowers are called as unisexual flowers. So there are two types of flowers. bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers. The flowers which contains both androecium and gynoecium in the same flower is called as bisexual flowers, and the flowers which have androecium and gynoecium in separate flowers is called as unisexual flowers. So let me write here bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers. Bisexual flowers are the flowers they are having both androecium and gynoecium in the same flower, and the unisexual flowers are the flowers they are having androecium and gynoecium in separate flowers. Then you want to find more examples for this bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers. Then in unisexual flowers, some flowers will have only androecium and some flowers are there with only gynoecium in their body. So the flowers which have only androecium is called as male flowers, and the flowers with gynoecium in their body is called as female flowers. In unisexual flowers, they are having only androecium or gynoecium in the flower, isn't it? So here the flowers with androecium in their body is called as male flowers, and the flowers with gynoecium only is called as female flowers. Then in those flowers the reproduction occurs by the help of both these male flowers and female flowers. Then we have to study about how the process of reproduction occurs in flowers. For that we have already studied about the reproductive organ in flowers. That is, male reproductive organ is androecium and female reproductive organ is gynoecium, isn't it? Then here is a picture of androecium. Then here we can see the anther and filament that we have already studied. So here in the anther, sometimes when we are holding this hibiscus flower in our hand, we can see a yellow color powder is sticking on our hands, isn't it? Some yellow color powder will be there in our hands when we are keeping this hibiscus flower in our hand. That yellow color powder is called as pollen grains. That yellow color powder is called as pollen grains, and which contains male gametes. These pollen grains contains male gametes. And we studied about the female reproductive organ in a flower, that is what? Gynoecium, isn't it? Here is the picture of gynoecium. Gynoecium is formed of stigma, style, ovary and ovule. Inside the ovary it contains eggs. So the process of reproduction occurs when these male gametes in the pollen grains reaches to the ovary and when it fuses with the eggs in the ovary. That particular process of fusing of male gamete with the egg is called as fertilization. So here when that yellow color powder is sticking on this stigma, that male gamete is passing through this style and reaches the ovary. Inside the ovary it contains eggs. So that male gamete in the pollen grains fuses with the eggs in this ovary. That particular process is called as fertilization. So now we have to study about how that male gamete reaches to the stigma of this gynoecium. We have already studied about which part is stigma, isn't it? This particular part is called as stigma of this hibiscus flower. So here we have to study about how that male gametes or the male gamete in the pollen grains reaches to the ovary of this flower. That particular process is called as fertilization, that is the fusing of male gamete with the egg. That process is called as fertilization, and we have to study about how this occurs. That is how the male gamete in the pollen grains reaches to the stigma. Which are the factors helping for that process? Those things we can discuss on the next class. So let me conclude all the things we have discussed now today's class. We have studied about bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers, male flowers and female flowers, and the process of reproduction. And last we have studied about the process of fertilization, that is the fusing of male gamete with the egg in the ovary. Then we have to study in detail about the process of fertilization, how it occurs. That we can discuss on the next class. So let's wind up our today's class. That's all for today. Thank you.